All right. Hi, friends. Joseph Varghese here and rulesforsuccess.com. I'm super excited, beyond excited. My good friend, Todd King, we have him today on the interview, rulesforsuccess.com. Access this podcast across all streaming services, including Spotify and iTunes and beyond. You can also access the podcast here at rulesforsuccess.com. We also have a bonus there. We'll have a summary, an AI summary of this podcast, and we'll also include a mind map. As an engineer, I love mind maps, being able to summarize the best, being able to kind of holistically connect both sides of the brain and see a tree diagram of all the things. You can kind of capture those things very quickly and easily. Todd is a good friend of mine. We met a few years ago through the Tony Robbins community. He has been a member of my Success Circles community. I have a lot of respect for him, not just as a peer, but also as a leader, as somebody who I see as a mentor. What he's done, which I want to invite our members of our community, Success Circle entrepreneurs, to see, is he's a true business owner. And we'll talk about what it means to be a business owner here in this conversation. An owner is really, and he also encourages owners, dentists and dental offices, the leaders there, to become owners too as well. So, which is so valuable because owners tend to have a bit more fun. They have businesses that run automatically. We'll go into that. We'll go into his new model acquisitions. We'll talk about some of his background in the past where he's been involved with real estate. A lot of cool stuff. Mr. Todd King, how are you today, brother?
I'm awesome. I'm so excited to be here because you are like the Bill Belichick of Rules for Success. You wrote the playbook. You wrote the rule book on this, and you always bring so many people on. I love having this, being on this podcast and just listening to all your episodes of everybody amazing that you brought on and some of the rules that they've shared. Wow, this is a really great honor.
Thank you, brother. Well, it's all a game, right? Life is a game. Our tagline is a bigger game. You just mentioned Bill Belichick, sports analogies as well. Also, I'm sure you're passionate about sports. A lot of our members are as well. Also, it's all a game. And in this game of life, how I see you is you're out there in the field. You're out there in the court, playing, kicking. You're at bat, doing the right things each and every day. And also, you encourage your clients to do those things too as well. Also, we just see life in everything as being a game. And games are fun. How did you get involved into this path of being an entrepreneur? Because I see you're in the top 3% of entrepreneurs that I've ever engaged with across, my 20 years in this path. How did you get involved with becoming an entrepreneur? Young age, like well, what happened there, brother?
So I'm West Virginia University. I'm in college. I'm sitting in my junior year. I'm sitting in a journalism building, Morgantown, West Virginia, and I'm going to school for public relations. And I'm sitting there thinking, how long is this going to be? Is this the career I really want to be in? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, wow, I was thinking, looking up the average income. I remember sitting there, the average income for a public relations person. I'm already 2.5 years into school. I'm like, this is really not what I want to do. So then instantly, I worked at a bar part-time on the weekends and different times during college. It's like, I'm going to buy that. So at 21, when I was still in school, I went and bought my first business. I bought a sports bar in Morgantown. Had that, and that's like started in the hospitality business. And things were pretty easy a lot there, just because it was college town, business was easy, but I learned so much about people and leadership and just so much throughout that whole process. And I just made the decision. I still finished my undergrad at WVU, but during that whole time, I'd never stopped being an entrepreneur since I was 21. And my parents, as much as I love them, like, you're crazy. This is not, you can't be going and buying a bar at 21. You're going to drink all your profits. You're going to, it's never going to be the right thing. And it ended up being probably the best thing that's ever happened, and made some great decisions from there. And then that just kind of led me on to my own self-development. I started with Robert Kiyosaki, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Went to a class that he did in Pittsburgh. I was like, man, I want to work for this guy. I want to work for Rich Dad. And at that point, I flew down to Florida. There was a company called Wealth Intelligence Academy that he was set up with. And I wouldn't leave until they hired me as a coach. So I went to this 3-day class and I saw all of these coaches there. And that's kind of how I started my coaching career. The whole time I was doing real estate investments. We were doing flipping houses, buying apartment buildings, still do some of those type of things. I focus more now on the private lending side of real estate. But I loved coaching and learning that and giving back. And I was going great all the way up until, I don't know, 2017, 18. My beautiful wife looks at me and she goes, Todd, You need to make a choice. She goes, you're spending over 200 nights a year in a hotel, traveling, helping everybody else. And do you want to do that? Or do you want to stay home and be a father and do your own business then and you know, kind of help yourself too and help this family. And so that's when I quit traveling around the country, around the world. We did some of the coachings all the way in Australia, all over Europe. We did everywhere. And it was an amazing run. I love it. Nothing to give back for it. But then when I came back home, that's when I started finding different organizations. And that's kind of how I found my little niche in dental coaching.
Yes. It's a Fortune Management. It's a
Yes.
unique company. And we also connected because I have a colleague, also a business partner, who's also involved with that organization too.
Yes.
But your background's unique. So it's an awesome journey, like getting to, I think a great place to start a career is hospitality, because you learn about concierge, really showing up, adding value, listening to clients, all of that with that bar. And I'm sure you thought you enter that business, you know, more as a business owner, like really with intelligence and of building a business, cash flow, all of that. Then you got into real estate with Robert Kiyosaki, one of the greats, right? And being a coach. I mean, you had an early start in this journey, which is fantastic, you know, and that wake-up call you mentioned, 2017 to 2018. So you're no longer traveling 200 evenings, 200 days a year, traveling on the road.
No.
You're now working locally with a Fortune Management Company, and Fortune is an organization. I know Tony Robbins had a part in starting it. He was involved early in the day, so I'm sure contextually it's all about providing value, because value is a big part of like his mission, and I'm sure the organization too. But so how's been that journey now, going from all that whole evolution to now being an executive coach now to these dental offices? My experience of working with physicians, I'm married to physician offices of a sort, is like they're kind of stuck in this mindset of kind of like running a business, but not necessarily running a business as an owner would, where they're kind of stuck in this rat race of like kind of catching up and doing marketing and business building. And now you own franchises, multiple franchises across multiple states on this. How has that journey been for you, brother?
It's a great question, because, you know, when you look at franchise, do I start my own business or do I build my own business? And I've done both. Absolutely have done both. When I found out that Fortune, which is we help physicians, we help dental practice owners across the country. And when I found out that it was founded by Tony Robbins, that was what kind of drew me. It was 35 years ago. He founded this company with a gentleman by the name of Dr. Paul Bass. And so I knew the core principles and the values. And for me to replicate that would have been difficult. Plus, I'm a real estate investor. What the do I know about dental offices in particular, you know? But I knew I needed to have a niche. So I knew I could do the coaching side of it, but there's a whole nother side. There's a whole nother practice management side that you need to it. We always say in Fortune, we wear 3 hats. We're an executive coach, we're a practice management specialist, and we're a key business strategist, key business advisor. And that's helping our dentists with transition plans, merger acquisitions, all those type of things. But the practice management specialist is, hey, we got to know how a dental office or anybody that's listening to this, the specialty side. Hey, how are they answering the phones? How is the team doing handoffs when somebody calls in and they need transferred to somebody else? What does that handoff look like? That should be done seamlessly. These are the things that we work on a lot with our clients. And then obviously the executive life coaching side of it, which we share a lot of the state management principles that I'm sure anybody listening to this podcast knows about, the triad and the basic state management principles and stuff along that. So yeah, that's really how I got into it. And then the franchise model, it was just worked out really, really good for me, because how it's set up is it's owned by basically like states, but territories. Sometimes it's cities. It really depends on the number of dentists. And we started just in Western Pennsylvania, and we've expanded out from there, Ohio, West Virginia. We're doing stuff in Indianapolis now, Indiana, Michigan, Chicago. So we've grown extensively, and I'm just thankful for the support from the franchise side of it. And then I still, like I said, I still do some of my own real estate business, my real estate lending and everything on the side as well.
Incredible. So I love how you bring that mindset of being an owner, not just to one area, but also to multiple locations. And that's basically the whole franchise model. So my mentor was Michael Gerber years ago, and he taught me a lot about this with my own business. But really, you've embraced that fully, because now you're across multiple states. And what's the experience like for that dentist as who's stressed out? They have an office. They might have they might have two other dentists working with them. And I have a lot of friends who are in this space. One of my best friends is a veterinarian, right? And
Yeah.
and he's also a member of Success Circles as well. And my experience of talking to him, other physicians, seeing my own dentist, is there's like this base level of like stress that's there, like ensuring that all of this is being managed accordingly, that people aren't like, like stealing and systems, and people sometimes don't come to work and there are breakdowns. And it's like, and there's also this vision on the other side of, what if I could build this in a way where it's scalable? Maybe I can have a second location. Maybe at some point this brand can become known in this territory, this area, where it can be sold, dental practice. Absolutely. Or this veterinarian business. What's the experience for that business owner, or that want to be business owner, dentist, who now all of a sudden has the freedom to really progress with that vision for themselves? What is that experience for them as they go through this training process, practice management, and all the different levels of this under Fortune and under you as an executive coach?
So one of the things that I always tell myself, and one of my rules for success, we can mark this down as number one for Todd, but is stay in your lane. I know I'm not clinical. I never try to be clinical, but having that outside perspective on how they're answering the calls, how that doctor is talking to their patients, how they're enrolling them, explaining the treatment to them. That's really where a really good coach comes into. And most dentists, doctors, they don't have business training and they don't have hospitality training. And there's a great book, and the guy that wrote the book, Will Guidara, it's called Unreasonable Hospitality. He owns a Michelin restaurant up in New York, close to you, Joseph. And I don't know if you've ever read the book, but it's a great book for anybody on here. And but it really just talks about doing unreasonable things for people. And you don't think about that in a medical facility. Most of us as business owners don't think about that. What can we do above and beyond to provide the best satisfaction for our customers? What can we teach our team members to do? And this is an example in the book, and I have to share it because it's one of my core principles, is to go above and beyond. And he talks about that there's a couple, maybe 2 or 4 people, I can't remember exactly how it is in the book, but they're dining at his Michelin restaurant in New York City. And they made a joke. One of his team members, his servers, the waiters at that overheard it. They said, we've been all the finest restaurants in New York, but we have not had a New York street hot dog. And they went back and they told Will this in the back in the kitchen. They're kind of like joking about this. And he goes, go find a hot dog. Go to the street, closest street vendor, get a hot dog. They go out to the street. They get a New York City hot dog. They bring it back. They chop it up into 4 different ways and put it on this big fancy plate. So they're at this Michelin restaurant, and they come on and they provide this unreasonable hospitality. They give the diners, here's a little treat from New York. But they did the hot dog at the Michelin restaurant, and it's an amazing story. But so I'm always another one of my little rules. What can we do that's above and beyond for our clients that make them more successful? And I always teach my teams their team members how can they provide a better experience?
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. I love that story. But I mean, what I get from that is also about creating a quality experience. People want a quality experience. They want things memorable. And I used to have a quote on my wall, my previous home. It went to like, the memory about quality lasts longer than the shock of high prices. So bringing quality, creating experience, going above and beyond, being unreasonable. I'm going to certainly check out that book. I'm going to recommend that book to one of my clients also in Success Circles. Marcus is his name. He also runs Top Restaurant, and I'm sure he knows about that book too as well also.
Oh, yeah.
So that's been fantastic. Thank you for that recommendation. Any other rules for success? Anything else that you come to realize that these offices, organizations, these dentists, these practices can embrace to really level the playing field and maybe even become an owner where they have freedom to travel? A big part of being an owner is having the flexibility to travel and knowing that the business runs automatically. And I know for yourself too, you embrace travels. You and your family, your lovely wife, and your children, your 3 children, you travel often and you have these experiences as a family. What do you recommend to like a practice where they can step more into being an owner, where they can have more of those experiences for themselves, knowing that in having those experiences, there's an opportunity to scale even faster and better. Any thoughts?
Yeah, it all goes into proper planning. Like one of the things I do every year, and we're coming up in the time of year where I start working with my dentist on this, is how many days do you feel are you going to be working clinically? What are your goals? And let's work that backwards. So we know what they're going to be making clinically, but then they all should be making money as the business owner. And they also should be making money as the owner, the CEO of the business, and making all those decisions. So I think one of the biggest rules is kind of around that is, and it's a little saying that I've kind of come up with over the years, is proactive people are wealthy. Reactive people are poor. And when I say poor, I don't just mean financially poor, mentally, physically, financially. So people that are working out of the rearview mirror instead of looking forward, they're never going to have the success because they're working backwards. And you can't really drive a car, right, looking out the rearview mirror. So I think that's something I tell my doctors, and that's why we spend so much time over planning. They're like, why do we got to do this? Why do you need to know how many clinical days I want to work next July? Why do you need to know this? Why is this important? But it's the same way with us. I know when I say us and my family is, hey, we plan everything out. We know where I'm going to be, when I'm speaking, which conferences I'm speaking at, and plan that all out in advance. So I know, hey, this is what my year is going to be like, and try to be as proactive as possible.
Incredible. And I can see the calendar on your left, and I have a calendar on my left as well. So, and we've got a giant calendar for the whole year upstairs. My wife and I have for our whole family, as far as we think the same too, being proactive, being able to forecast, see what's happening down the line, just thinking accordingly, maybe even also like thinking, we talk about vacations, like forecasting that vacation. What would it mean to be on the beach or be on that cruise or be in Europe or Asia, knowing that we're having the experience of our lives, knowing that things are running automatically, being proactive, having systems, really training staff, going through those processes over and over and over again until they get it down, right? Repetition is the master of all skill, or mother of all skill, as we often hear and learn.
Absolutely, it is.
Awesome, brother. Well, that's absolutely great. And how did you now go from this space of dental practice? Of course, people can go to Fortune Management, their website. Fortune, you can just Google search Todd King's name. He's a leader. He's an executive coach in this space. He owns multiple franchises. There are articles you've written on these sites I've seen as well. How have you gone from that to also getting involved with dental acquisitions? And I know you have a podcast. I believe it's called Drill Down on Dental Deals. Is that accurate?
Yes, we're going to be launching a podcast here really soon. Basically, it is a podcast for dental entrepreneurs. I call them dentopreneurs. People that are dentists that really want to become entrepreneurial, and about how to buy practices. The dental practices trade just like, a real estate transaction or any other business. And there's a lot of really good opportunities there. One thing at Fortune I do want to mention is we're all about the preservation of private practice. And what that means is we are all about the owners keeping their business. It's not about selling out to the big hospital chains or the big block store dental offices that you see that are beside your Best Buys and different things like this. You probably know what I'm talking about. We really care about the private practice owners, and trying to keep dental and medical has changed a little bit, and trying to keep dental where it is the private practice doctor can still own their own practice, thrive, and buy multiple practices. And so I really want to raise awareness around that. And it's kind of the mission of the podcast, and to really help people understand the deals. There's so many challenges that it comes into. And some of the statistics I could show you, I mean, it bore everybody's, but if I really went through all the statistics, but the amount of dentists that are baby boomers that are shutting their doors down, they've worked their whole entire career, Joseph. They're 30, 40 years building this practice. And now they're struggling with technology like the AIs, like the 3D printers that are coming in now, all that we call the intraoral cameras and all the different technologies. They get intimidated, they don't want to invest in that, and they just decide they're going to shut their doors. And now they thought this was going to be their retirement for so long. And what I love to do is with my clients is really structure what we call it just mergers and acquisitions. There's different things like earnouts, where we help those people that were shutting their doors and getting nothing these dentists that have built something, help them preserve that legacy, and then help our private practice as well. So really that is kind of the mission behind that, and just to bring awareness around the opportunities that are out there. Because there's no MLS for dental offices like there is for real estate. There's no LoopNet like there is for a lot of businesses. You might find a dental office here and there on LoopNet, but there's just a few individual brokers, and most of them don't even go into there because of the extensive contracts that they have to sign to go into a brokerage relationship.
So you essentially provide them a bit of an exit strategy by having them look at numbers, specifics, and do you help them also innovate? Is that a part of it to get to a certain level with this? Or
Yeah, so somebody that's my client, we absolutely do that. It's all part of being proactive. We call it the 5 business engines. And one of the 5 business engines that we look at every single year is clinical and technology. What are you going to invest in next year that's going to provide the biggest ROI for you? You know, is it going to be that that new special camera or that scanner that's going to be able to show everybody what actually is going on in their mouth? I don't know if you ever heard of VAK, right? Visual auditory kinesthetic learners, right? Mm-hmm. It's the same. And a lot of these dentists, you know, they go in and they explain things one way, auditory, but that's not how everybody learns. Right. If somebody says something to you, sometimes you don't understand it, and a confused mind never does it typically. And then they go home and try to explain it to their wife. Well, maybe they have some bigger issues. So really, we love the technology, how it can provide the learning of the full VAK model, right? Come to people and talk to people that how they want to be treated, talk to, not how you want to be talked to, or not how you know to be talked to.
What's an example? So I know I'm a big believer in systems, right? And scaling is a matter of having good systems and training and educating people on these basic things. And it's simple. Like, people overcomplicate these things. And one of my favorite acronyms for systems is save yourself time, money, save yourself time, energy, money, and sanity. It's one of my favorite acronyms, because once these things are integrated, there's now more opportunity to really see the bigger picture and to do unique things. Can you give an example of maybe an office you've worked with in any of your locations, any of your states, where they've followed this process, this model, this just training back and more, where all of a sudden the owner had now more time, more energy, more money. Maybe he was able to do something unique, or maybe buy the building next door, or you know, I'm curious if there's an example you can kind of, like a case study, you can kind of like walk us through.
First one, I got perfect example, and he's become a great friend of mine. He's a dentist that was out of school. He partnered in his practice with his mom. His mom was a dentist, and it is here in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And so they had a practice. He was working 5 days a week, working very, very hard. And he comes to us and goes, we never teach somebody our vision. I never coach somebody. A true coach should never be about their vision. Never tell somebody what to do. You listen, you absorb, and you help them make sure that they're maintaining their vision. I knew his vision was to have multiple locations, but always stay private practice. And what he's been able to do in the last 5 years, we just opened location number 5. It's all happened in the last 5 years. So it's done extensive growth. I think the average growth is about 120% per location per year-over-year growth. It's been phenomenal. But having those systems in place that's replicable, and also, you know, in merger acquisitions, one of the things is what we call synergies, and how by expanding, and it's something you need to evaluate, what synergies can you bring? So it's not always the top line, it's the bottom line too, right? Mm-hmm. So by bringing in these synergies, how can we help increase the bottom line? How can we make this work? You know, that dentist that's selling, or that dentist that maybe doesn't think he can sell because his expenses are so high, he's showing no money. So most people won't even list it or even be interested in it. Well, hey, we can bring our systems in that we already have in place, our synergies. Now we can know, we look at that, we create our new pro forma. Now we know that we're able to, hey, we're going to be able to make this profitable. And especially too, let's get them trained a little bit. Let's get them trained on some of the practice management stuff. We can take this practice that was about ready to shut the doors, which all 5 of his were. All 5 of them were very close to shutting their doors, and they've all expanded. Almost, I think I can say this: all of them are over $1 million in production per year now. So,
What's been the experience for the dentist for that the owner now that he's really stepped into being an owner? What has that provided him?
Yeah, he'd be a great guest. Before you go, he's great, and he's actually going to be one of the guys that I'll have on my podcast. But
Awesome.
he works 3 days a week clinically. He really likes certain procedures. He really likes doing the implants and the bigger procedures. So all 5 of the locations have kind of been where he can kind of pick and choose the days he works, but he does the bigger surgeries and the bigger procedures. So he's pretty much, he has people set up in each one, and just the way that I've watched him become a leader and an inspiration. We'll talk about, my big why, but because you've helped me develop it, but it's all about being an inspiration for me.
Incredible, brother. Absolutely inspiring. And for me, I know as a coach, the work I do, success circles, and what you're doing as well, there's a joy in seeing people have these ahas, have these moments where they're now stepping into becoming a better business owner, a better leader, having more passion, more time, seeing the bigger picture, putting their energy, their thoughts into what's next for themselves as far as legacy. I know you're big about legacy too, so thank you for sharing your why just now. What does legacy look like for you with all these ventures and acquisitions and real estate, and of course your passion as executive coach you've got 3 kids too? What does legacy look like for you?
Yeah, so it's so funny. I was having a conversation the other day, and somebody asked me, they go, "Todd, what's your magic number?" And I said, a lot of people in business say your magic number. What's it going to take for you to sell your business, or to shut your doors, or for you to go live on an island and do whatever? And I was sitting, and this kind of goes into legacy, but I was sitting there thinking, I was like, there's no magic number for me. I love what I do. Unfortunately, some of my dentists, they're bent over and they're inside somebody's neck. They get neck trouble, shoulder trouble, arm trouble. Being a coach, luckily I don't have those kind of restraints. So to me, there's no real magic number. I love what I'm doing. And the legacy part of this is going to be able to help everybody else extend their legacy. Exactly these older dentists that think that they're up, and some of them are in really bad shape. I don't know if you've ever heard this before, but dentists have some of the highest suicide rates of any profession. And so they're in a lot, but for them to be able to preserve their legacy in some shape or form is a huge win. And so seeing them and when everything gets done, a lot of times it takes a lot to get there, because some of the stuff's more complicated, the paperwork, everything involves in buying a business, and some of that can be intimidating. And once you get through a lot of those things, then it's seeing that and seeing other people's pass on their legacy. And I would say that, and just to keep doing, I do something called Youth Mastering Entrepreneurship. And what this is we do a lot of classes for urban areas, different areas. I work with a nonprofit. Sometimes I do a class once or twice a year in this. I'm actually going and speaking at my daughter's high school here next week on, they have an entrepreneurship class. So I think it's just really teaching people you don't have to go and do that 9-to-5 job. There's so many other options.
That's incredible, brother. I appreciate that you're educating the youth around this too, because sometimes when you get started and you have a vision in terms of how to make something cash flow positive and successful early on, it makes all the difference versus actually being decades into it and having kind of these old systems, old ways of doing things. And then we need to be disrupted to see what's possible. And I love what you're doing with that. The podcast too, as well, kind of sharing, stories of acquisitions, like really showcasing what's possible. And with, you mentioned the gentleman you helped with the 5 practices and others, but it's really helping people step into a world of possibility, whether it's early on or whether they're 30, 40 years into their practice where they're kind of stuck in a certain way, giving them access to really, really maximizing their potential, right? Having an exit strategy, having a legacy like you have. And it is a really beautiful legacy that you have as far as being able to go and to teach these youth that way. I'm curious if you could give advice to, let's say, an 18-year-old version of yourself, kind of going back in time to, yourself coming out of high school, going to college, becoming an adult, or I'll give you an or. The or could be an 18-year-old now who's exploring becoming an entrepreneur, going to college, starting a business at some point. What's one piece of advice you'd offer that person?
I think it really comes down to, I always call it the 6 areas of life mastery. That's 6. But if I had to tone down the 6 levels of life mastery into one, is your emotions. Understanding your emotions and not letting them get the best of you. I think that's absolutely the biggest thing. Even when I was 21, everything was emotional.
Yeah.
All decisions were emotional based decisions, and it's taken the emotion out of things. And I would say emotional mastery would be my number one tip. Even my youth mastering entrepreneurship, I give them an abbreviated triad, as many of the Tony Robbins people know here. I always start out with emotional intelligence and start out with the triad and how, what questions are you asking yourself and what's great about this. And and that really kind of goes into, I would say, the emotional intelligence. Because when you're 18 years old, you're not thinking about that. You know everything. At least I did. I thought everything.
Me too. I had good people around me. I know you're a faith-based entrepreneur too, as well. And I had a lot of those experiences growing up that caused me to stay in line, make better decisions, but not the perfect decisions. So that's really extraordinary. And for our audience watching this, of course, the triad, we talk about that. It's managing emotions, it's managing our physiology. It's also recognizing the language we say kind of creates our world. So having positive, empowering language, and as we communicate with others and ourselves too, as well. Anything else you'd add to that, brother?
No, I think is really having your emotions and really having your why. And I think, why do you want to do this? It's not just monetary. You got to do something that you're going to love doing. I love coaching. And so really to have a successful, fulfilled life, it was not in the bar business for me. I'm so glad I did that, but that wasn't my why. I was able to find my why, and I was able to get educated, good and bad. I lost money, made money, everything else along the way. But I think understanding having that why, and that's when I mentioned this earlier, but I mentioned again, just kind of even, I've read the Simon Sinek stuff on the why, but I really never took the time to really develop that why. And I think that is very important. And, having that why are you doing what you're doing? Develop that real reason. What do you want? I know it's hard at 18 years old or 21 years old to figure that out, but what do you really want in life?
Absolutely, brother. And oftentimes it's not just about the money, it's about creating impact. I believe as most of us get older, we start recognizing the good and God in each of us, that our why becomes about that, adding value, creating impact, leaving a positive legacy to the world. And you're certainly somebody who does that on a regular basis, from my experience, and having you as a friend all these years. Last question, and there might be one more question after the but I'll if it comes up, I'll think about it. Sure. What are some rituals, habits, things you do on a daily basis to keep yourself making progress, embracing forward momentum? What are some things that you do? Perhaps even, you mentioned before, emotional mastery. That's something you teach to these youths or early entrepreneurs. What are some things you do to stay engaged and aligned with your why each day?
Yeah, it's great. So we teach something in Fortune called the bold statement. And the bold statement is, when you're not in the best state, what can you say or what can you do to get yourself into a good state? And my big why is, I'm an inspiration as a husband, as a father, as a coach, and as a son of God for all those around me. And so my bold statement is what I'm about to do being an inspiration. So it's a habit that I've developed when I get into asking myself not good questions, because who we're communicating with first. We're always communicating with ourselves first, right? We're always asking ourselves questions constantly. So I always ask myself, is what I'm asking myself, is this leading me to an inspiration for somebody else? Is this leading me to be the best self for this, how I want to lead myself in front of my kids, my family, my clients, as a coach, and most importantly, like you said earlier, is God.
Incredible, brother. Absolutely incredible. I completely align with that. And I mean, a lot of what you just shared just now is about emotional mastery, and it starts with ourselves, how we talk to ourselves each day, and how we set our day in motion is a big factor of that. It's a big factor of that too as well. So that's extraordinary. It's really extraordinary. How do people contact you, Todd? I know you've got one site, jtkinginv.com. It's kind of your background in real estate and ventures and acquisitions. You're starting a podcast called Drill Down on Dental Deals that's coming out soon. How does somebody engage with you in conversation to maybe work with you as either an executive coach or even, let's say, real estate? I know you've got your multi-entrepreneur, you're an owner, you've got freedom, flexibility, where you're able to do some unique, fun things while helping others live their purpose.
Yeah, JT King INV is kind of my main site that I use for my personal branding. And that's where I also do run a lot of my private lending deals, which somebody has a single family home that maybe a traditional bank will not lend on. We come and we will do that bridge financing a lot of times. We'll be the one that allows that real estate investor to have that money to be able to go get traditional financing, either refinance us and pay us out, or they turn around and flip the home. But we never long term, you know. But if anybody real estate investors listening, that's something that we do. But yeah, JT King INV, you can find a little bit of information about that. We also buy notes, private mortgages and stuff as well. But that website's www.jtkinginv.com. And if there's any dentists listening, I would highly recommend going to fortunemgmt.com. It's Fortune Management. We're the largest executive coaching company for dentists. We provide a lot of CEE events all across the country. I think we have 150 coaches like myself throughout the country. Not all are franchisees. Like I work with a lot of people on my team that are coaches, and yeah, so we have a lot of great resources there.
Amazing, brother. And I think anyone listening to this conversation, I know anyone listening to this conversation will really be inspired, realizing that they too can become business owner too as well. So the different stages of being an entrepreneur. Initially, people get involved. They're an operator, they're an integrator, they're kind of managing it all, and eventually they break out of being that operator artist, and they becoming a manager, and eventually become ideally a true entrepreneur, which is basically a business owner. They have flexibility and freedom. And I'm inspired by you because you live out life. And I'm inspired by you because you also inspire other dentists and individuals and leaders to also live out life too as well. And there's so much more freedom, flexibility, and vivaciousness and fulfillment in that role as being an owner. And any final words you'd say around that, or to kind of close out this podcast?
I think the biggest thing is CANI, right? Is constant never-ending improvement. You've heard that before. Is not get funneled into just learning one way to do things. I've done a ton of education with Rich Dad, ton of education with Tony Robbins. I recently started going back to getting more formal education. Got a certificate from Columbia Business School in mergers and acquisitions. But I would always just say another big thing for success, one of the rules for success, is diversify your education. Learn all the different ways. There's not one just right way to do it, and find as many good sources to get educated as possible in whatever you're trying to learn in your business.
Absolutely brilliant. I love that. I love that. It's an awesome way to end the conversation. Embrace CANI. Always be learning, diversify your knowledge, different places, and don't be disrupted. We're in a day and age now with technology and AI where people can be disrupted, where they could lose their business and so forth. And as we CANI ourselves, constant never-ending improvement, or Kaizen principles, another way of looking at it, you're ensuring that what you're building, the legacy you're living, is going to continue for years, decades, generations to come. And that's extraordinary. It's an extraordinary purpose you live, my friend. It's an honor knowing you. For our audience out there, tap into this podcast episode at rulesforsuccess.com. Got the summary, the mind map. It's also available on all the different stations out there. Access Todd's brilliance at jtkinginv.com. And with that said, it's been a pleasure. Rulesforsuccess.com. Todd, always great, my friend, talking to you and connecting, and be blessed, my friend.
You too.